Manchester United's week prior to the international break saw them focus solely on cup competitions as Erik ten Hag continued his aim of securing as much silverware as possible in his first season at the club. With the Carabao Cup in the bag and progression to the quarter-finals of the Europa League secured, United then progressed to the semi-final of the FA Cup with a win over Fulham. While their importance may have dwindled over the years, domestic trophies still hold a special place in the hearts of plenty of those associated with United. Chief among the supporters of domestic cup competitions is Sir Alex Ferguson. However, back in 1999, the Reds became one of the most controversial clubs in the country due to their perceived attitude towards the FA Cup. Men's Sport has taken a look at the story of how United chose the Club World Cup over the FA Cup and how the difficulty of choosing between competitions could rear its head again in 2025. When delving back into this issue, it is important to remember one aspect which is so often misremembered over the years. Ferguson and United never wanted to abandon their hopes of playing in the FA Cup. The legendary United boss was always a big fan of the domestic cup, as mentioned previously, and the idea of not defending the FA Cup in the 1999-2000 season was not on the cards, in his mind. However, United's plans were turned on their head after they qualified for the Club World Cup in Brazil due to their Champions League glory the season prior. This would prove to be the first iteration of the tournament which pitted clubs from different confederations against each other, but the idea has never received much support in England or Europe. So, when the FA asked United if they wished to be exempt from the FA Cup to focus on the Club World Cup, it was a decision that the Reds had to agonize over. Eventually, in a press conference on June 30, 1999, United released a statement confirming their decision. It read, "We realize that many of our supporters will be as disappointed as we are with our decision not to compete in the FA Cup. Manchester United see this as an opportunity to compete for the ultimate honor of being the very first World Club champions." Every United supporter was left asking the same thing. Why? Well, it transpired that United were experiencing pressure from the powers that be. England was in the midst of a push to host the 2006 World Cup, and the FA, and even the government, thought that the Reds playing in the inaugural Club World Cup would help the country's case to host the international tournament. But Ferguson was not backing down. According to Andy Walsh, a member of the independent Manchester United Supporters Association at the time, Ferguson rang Prime Minister Tony Blair to see if they could back down from the decision. Speaking to the Daily Mail, Walsh recalled a conversation he had with the legendary boss about the saga. He said, "Both Sir Alex and then Chairman Martin Edwards were under incredible pressure from Tony Banks, the Prime Minister's envoy for the World Cup bid, and from David Davies, the FA's acting chief executive, to pull out of the FA Cup and go to Brazil for the FIFA tournament. As fans, we wanted to find ways of keeping them in the FA Cup, and we thought we had come up with a solution. It involved moving some of the fixtures to earlier in the season and creating a gap before United were due to go in January, during which, if the FA would move the tie, they could play their third-round cup match. We were playing Arsenal and Martin Edwards was sat next to the new Minister for Sport, Kate Hoey. She made some remark along the lines of, 'I believe you're ruining this season's FA Cup,' and when word of that got back to Fergie, he was furious. I spoke to him over the phone and he said, "That's it, they're forcing us out. F*** them. We're going to Brazil and that's the end of it." Then he told me that he had tried to call Tony Blair and he couldn't sort it. I'd seen Blair on the news that morning going to Yugoslavia, so I asked Fergie what had been said. He told me that Blair had told him he was about to go into a meeting with Slobodan Milosevic and that was the end of it. With their minds made up, United jetted to Brazil where they would draw with Mexican side Necaxa and lose to Brazilian club Vasco da Gama. As we all know, the 2006 World Cup was held in Germany, so it did not even succeed in the mission it set out to achieve. Looking back at the scenario 10 years on, Ferguson expressed his regret at what happened. "It turned out to be a disaster for us," he said. "We did it to help England's World Cup bid. That was the political situation. I regretted it because we got nothing but stick and terrible criticism for not being in the FA Cup when, really, it wasn't our fault. The FA and the government felt that playing in this tournament would help England's bid to host the 2006 World Cup. There was a lot of undue criticism, but it was a great 2-week break. Now, you may wonder how this relates to 2025, but there are some parallels. FIFA announced recently that they are going ahead with plans to extend the Club World Cup to a 32-team competition. This would see the tournament move to June and July, potentially impacting the start of the Premier League season in August. If United qualify for the tournament, Ten Hag, or whoever is manager of the club at that point, will be left with a dilemma as to which competition to prioritize. The turnaround between the two seasons is already tight, and a long Club World Cup will only add to the seemingly constant fixtures which now plague the modern-day football manager. While in 1999, the FA were pushing for United to take part in the Club World Cup, the Reds may find themselves in a scenario where those same football governing bodies are ironically calling for them to withdraw from the international tournament in 2025.